One of the most helpful books I have ever read, honestly, about anything to do with making something for anybody and trying to give it to them at the absolute highest level of value that you can. So much so that you'd have a harder time to fail. Funnily enough, it's not called higher success rate or stacking value, but instead a $100 million offer. And of course, this book is from the fabled Alex Hormozi, who is lovely and provides an absolute massive amount of content online. I'm sure you've seen him in some capacity. Guy with hat, big old beard, beautiful luscious locks. Also hella jacked or shredded. Probably more shredded than jacked, but yes. No. However you want to phrase it, and however you may feel about him, I adore a lot of the content he makes. I don't know if I'm at that level of insanity of go, 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 cough up blood, go, go, go more, but I'm doing my best to, how does his wife put it, increase your capacity for work. There we go. And I think I have a pretty good capacity for work. I don't know why I turned into Elmo. Anyways, but yes, ladies and gentlemen, this is, of course, a book review of the absolute fantastic $100 million offer, which is part one of a 3-part series that Alex Hormozi has made for basically entrepreneurship of a kind. So this is a book about entrepreneurship, but ladies and gentlemen, please stick around because it's not just entrepreneurship. If you work in any sort of creative field where you're trying to make something for someone, it is incredibly valuable, even just for like his value equation, for instance. I will talk about many things I've learned in the book. I have taken a cataclysmic amount of notes and redefined them in my own dyslexic nightmare hell with things. Also, I hope it's a lie. I took the PDF. He gives the advice to listen to the audiobook and then read it. And man, to me, I always listen to it and then I just make a bunch of notes and highlight things because my brain has a hard time seeing them, just like something, I don't know. Anyways, the first thing this book talks about, after the whole gambit of Alex Hormozi's weird up and down entrepreneurial nightmare of things working out, bad bets turning into good bets, basically being perseverance is really, really key. And this thing that he says a lot, which I really enjoy, and I think you might as well, which is, so long as I do not quit, I cannot lose. This idea being, let's run the worst possible outcome, where you try, and you try, and you try again, and you're old and gray, and you still haven't attained whatever thing that you're working towards. At the very least, you still get to die knowing that you put every single thing on the table, and you strive for something when so many people don't strive for anything. It's not much, but at least it's something, and kind of unlikely. If you continue and continue and continue to push, there's a chance always that you will hit something. And he makes this point about business, you only really need to hit once, meaning unlike other things where you might put in 10% effort or 100% effort, and you may get 30% or 40% back. With business, you can put 100% of your effort in and maybe, just maybe, get 100 million X your investment or your input. And I think he would define all the skills you learn being a thing that increases that percentage chance that you can get something to hit. But before I get too caught into the weeds of the fantastic book and all the things that I want to tell you about that I think are brilliant, and probably ramble about them a little bit. His wife, oh my God, dude. If Alex Hormozi is like the like mechanical aspect of your brain, his wife, at least to me, is, I don't know how to describe it, but to me it kind of feels like the more emotional slash thing that makes more sense to me, but I may naturally be more emotional. And maybe they'd even push back at that. Maybe they're like, nah, I'm more mechanical. I don't know. But at the very beginning of this year, she uploaded a video and it was fucking brilliant. Layla. She basically made this video that talked about, instead of focusing on your outcomes, try to focus on your inputs. So I've heard this kind of talked about in a lot of ways, but this was by far the best way I've ever heard it described. This idea basically being like, don't subscribe to your outcomes. A book that I really enjoy is called With Winning in Mind by Lenny Bazum, which was a guy who trained like world star Olympic athletes consistently, and they consistently got gold medals. And he talks about this idea of like, you don't fall in love with the outcome, you fall in love with the process that gets you to the outcome, all the things that you can do that are in your control that gets you closer. Now this makes sense, and it's said like that, which is nice, and it's understandable, but it doesn't really feel actionable. But the actionable aspect of it, how Layla puts it, which is basically focus on your inputs. So you want a goal, you want to reach for something, you want to make a dent in something, fantastic. Determine what that is. Maybe it's, I want to meet more people, or I want to become more social, I would like to maybe meet my wife. All of these things. I would like to grow my business. I would like to have a business. Any of these outcomes. And then you would basically write out all of the inputs that would basically function you getting closer to that thing. So for instance, for me, it would be, I really want to pursue entrepreneurship and own a business and make a certain amount of money. Great. what would be one of the inputs that I would have? Okay, well, I need to know a lot about a lot of this stuff. So I would say one input could be learning just anything about entrepreneurship. And I even put in the algebra, basically like the math of it that no one really wants to learn, but would be helpful for you to learn. Things like marketing and sales and all those other variables. I might even make different inputs for those things. Like I would need to learn marketing, I would need to learn sales, I would need to learn how to acquire and maintain that customer base, things like that. So if you list out all those things, then you can know every single day when you go to sleep, you can check off one of those things. And by checking off one of those things, you know that you basically have taken one step or contributed one input to actually being able to get one step closer to your actual thing. And also, and this is the thing that kind of made me surprised, it's way more useful seeing why you're not making progress in other things. So you only have a certain amount of time every day. So every single night time I go to bed, I basically check off the inputs that I was able to hit that day. And sometimes you notice that, oh man, I haven't really been hitting my input of like meeting people. And I really would like to have like a family one day. That's an input that you have to intentionally know you're giving that up. But also, if you're achieving a lot in one input, you know that all you need to do is focus your attention on one input after that. So you always keep that like high leverage, high clip run kind of thing. And I think that's helpful. But anyways, fantastic video I watched, which I think is great for goal setting. And I think it'd be great if you were about to start reading this book to watch that video, which I probably will link down below in the description in a pinned comment. But back to the book. Sorry, kind of got off track. I just don't think his wife gets her flowers enough, especially considering to me, they're like the antidote to each other in a weird way. Sometimes when things feel a little bit too mechanical and numb, her videos to me make more like the human element that I'm like, oh, that makes more sense. Or not makes more sense, but it's more sense in this context, something. This is the one thing that's the only criticism I have for the entire book. And I enjoy the shit out of this book. This book is really, really helpful, but to me, there's a gap in the very, very like zero, basically. So Alex Hormozi is brilliant, and he's like the whole name to fame if you guys aren't familiar with him. He's taken a bunch of businesses from zero to a lot. And then his main claim to fame is taking businesses that are already doing a certain amount and then taking them to fucking galactic levels, essentially. But the one thing that I wish that there was more of, but I think it's incredibly hard to like do, it's the zero. So instead of going like, okay, so now you have a business that makes at least $10,000 a month, or okay, now you have a business that makes at least $5,000 a month. It's the zero, which is like you have nothing, you know nothing. And he has videos that are really helpful on this, kind of. He also has a program that he has, like, which is how to scale your business 0 to 100 on his actual website. Where he says, like, at the end of the day, all you need is a phone, the ability to work for free for a little bit of time until you can get the skill set that you can then charge for, and then knowing like some skills like how to, like, being able to phone someone or being able to like email someone to then get customers, and breaks it down at a fundamental like ground level. But I still find myself in this weird state of like, I don't know if it's like paralysis. Yeah, like a type of paralysis where like you're kind of stuck in the planning phase. But for me, it's less about planning and it's more about like understanding the value that you can offer to someone else. And like mentalities and like prompts or something to break your mind into that sentiment. Because I feel like so many people have like a vast amount of skill sets that they just don't think are valuable, or they don't think are like businessifiable, essentially. So that's the only criticism I have for the book, is it does feel like you're starting at phase 2 or 3 instead of starting at phase 0. Which maybe that's just like the entrepreneurial spirit in a lot of people, which is like, hey, you're gonna have to eat shit, so I'm not gonna help you. But I think there could be some sort of like course or some sort of like thing where you're constantly drilling into the skill set that you have and all of the variables that could possibly be valuable to somebody. Anyways, sorry, back to the book. So for some people who are already entrepreneurs or already own a business or already kind of dabble in things like that, you might be thinking to yourself, well, what is the book's contents? Like, why should I value it? Can you give me something that would make me understand a concept that I didn't understand beforehand, or maybe it's a concept that I'm not interested in, or maybe it's a concept that's really valuable to me? Here's that. So one of the concepts he talks about in the book, which is really interesting, is the idea of picking the right market. So the first thing he suggests about picking the right market is these 4 variables, which is you need somebody who is in a great deal of pain, which I'm sure you guys have heard about, or a starving crowd, someone who is very much hungry for what you're trying to sell. And then the second one is purchasing power. You also want to have someone that when you offer something to them, they can actually afford what you're selling it for. This idea basically being, he gives a great example about how a friend was extremely good about making like a resume, But people who are looking for work are probably not very keen on spending money for like a $200 resume course or something like that, right? So he kind of talked about this idea of like there could be certain things that you're trying to market towards. They may not be able to afford what you're selling. Third variable is the ease of access to be able to target or reach that person. Reach is probably a better way to find it. You could have an amazing product for a specific type of person, but maybe they're not accessible. Like maybe they're so specific or so varied that they don't have a community that they really belong to. Or maybe it's something more obvious like I help people who are older and retired figure out how to use YouTube or the internet or this editing program or this whatever, Pinterest. And in your question, you kind of cannibalize yourself of like, hey, I help older people who are not tech savvy do stuff that is tech savvy. How are you going to reach people who aren't tech savvy? It's still possible. It's just significantly harder than otherwise, right? Whereas if you're like, I help people learn how to make the best steak with this specific twist on it or something, you can see there's fucking Reddits about steak. There's like cooking channels that are about meat and stuff like that you could market or sell to, or even create content about that could tap into that same algorithm and such. Oh, and then the last lever he says that's really important when it comes to like deciding what market you're gonna choose is growth. So the market should at least be growing at the rate in which the market around it is growing. So if he gives an example of newspapers in the book, which is great, which is this idea of like newspapers are continuing to die. So if you're going to make a business that like helps out newspapers, your business isn't by its very nature going to die because newspapers are dying. Whereas if you look into something else like AI right now, I know people are exhausted with AI, but that's a market that is exploding. So if you invest in that, you're not going to have to work nearly as hard to like reach the same people or be able to sell at like a lower cost and all that stuff. Speaking of lower cost, that brings us beautifully into one of the aspects of his next chapter, which might be a little divisive. But it's interesting because I've always thought about this in a really weird way of like, I'm sure you're similar, or like when you see these companies charge an exorbitant amount for products and how you're like, that seems kind of shady and all that kind of stuff. I can't afford it. Can we really not make something that's like a little more tangible for people who aren't like super set? But if you think about business and just think about the business aspect of it, it kind of makes a lot of sense why these businesses function the way they are. It kind of has to do with like risk as well as your capacity to scale and grow. In one of these chapters, he basically speaks to this idea of like a race to the bottom. So if you sell something for a really, really low price to compete with somebody who is also selling at a low price, you basically can only go to zero. And also you're making no money. So you have no money to reinvest as well. So it's just two fundamental problems of like your competition will always like work each other down to nothing, to where like you're not making any profit. Therefore, you have no way to make a better product or to scale your business so that it actually can succeed. And the only companies that can really do this are companies that are huge, that have like a ton of infrastructure and like a ton of employees, probably working for not the same amount of money that you're going to be wanting to get paid for, etc. Things like that, to where it's just a failing system. Whereas, and this is an example of like, if you charge something that's higher and you theoretically can deliver, this is the biggest thing, delivering, then you can therefore make a ton of money and then be able to reinvest that in your product and offer even better services. So instead of thinking about it as like, oh, I'm charging so much for money or charging so much for a product, instead of I'm charging so much because I want to ultimately offer a much better service and or a thing or a product, so to speak. I feel like the capitalistic machine tends to be a little stacked in profit instead of making a superior product that's really good. To be fair to the other side of this, which is like, yes, it would be great if like a good chunk of the money went back into like the business and all that stuff and not into a particular like subsect of something that is probably like another jet for another person that, yes, is providing value, but I don't know if I'm getting a better product out of this. And the easy way to understand this is he says there's always going to be a chart of like value to cost that you can sell, basically. So the idea, instead of trying to like sell your thing at a lower cost, which will intrinsically probably like lower the amount of value that you can provide, instead try to maximize the amount of value that you can provide to somebody and the subsequent price that you're going to offer to them. And ultimately, you're always going to try to strive for a something that is going to be worth it. Worth the price, or else people won't buy it, But yeah, it was just a really interesting like takeaway that like I was pretty on the other side of things, where like I always want a deal. I always want like the most amount of value for the least amount of money that I need to spend. And again, by that very virtue, it makes a business hard to scale off of, and there usually has to be some cut cost. And I could also see if you're in a position in your life where you have an excess amount of wealth, or just a decent amount of wealth, where you're like, I want the most amount of benefits with the most amount of durability, with the most amount of long-lasting like efficiency, with the most amount of care. And yeah, that explains why there's like these really high-class brands. But I still feel like some of those brands don't offer the highest level of service. But anyways, like brand power, I feel like is something that people don't talk enough about, which is a lever, but it kind of feels a little morally weird for me. Anyways, he also talks about when picking the right market, about these fundamental like core pillars that people always have problems with, which is health, wealth, and relationships. Like if you wanted to bet on any horse, anything, any market-wise that affects these three things, have a high probability to succeed, because these are problems that will always persist within humanity. But I will also say seems like a lot of people who are targeting them, but granted, maybe that's not reasonable, because I feel like that's not reasonable, because I feel like, you just have to target the right type of person, and make the right kind of offer, which is kind of the sentiment of the book, which is ultimately like, what if you just provided more? And by providing more, you could charge more. And what if you invested in things that actually make your offer just better? Just to kind of shortcut the book a little bit, that's essentially the soul of the book, I think, which is, what if, exactly what the book is called, make an offer so good that they feel stupid saying no. So he goes into this premise of a grand slam offer. And the idea is you walk through, well, first you need a market, first you need a who and a what. And then when you have a product and an idea of who you're selling to, then you want to niche down, which he also talks about the valuableness of doing that. But then he reinforces that by saying, okay, so now that you have a person that you're trying to sell to, and now you have a product that you're interested in selling, now why don't you walk through every single aspect of the process, essentially? So if you are a person, he gives a great example of, you're in the process of maybe signing up for a gym. And you're trying to think of like, okay, what are the things that are impeding somebody from signing up to the gym, or maybe even it's something simpler like buying your exercise program. What are all the points of friction that your customer might interact that might stop them from making a purchase? So if you're like, hey, I have this program that shows you how to get like the best shoulders you've ever seen in your life, or abs, or whatever it could be, the person that's buying that product isn't just showing up, like pops into existence and says, yes, my only thing I deal with in my daily life is ab gain. Thank you, sir, and leaves. No, they're a living person with variables on the back end and the top end, and infinitely more in both directions. So the idea he gives, which is, okay, after breaking down all of the things that the person who's interested in, let's say, abs, would want and would value, and would make this offer actually much more enticing and get them to buy, what if we write down all of those? So what do they have outside of actually doing the work to do crunches and doing all these things, even though I know abs are made in the kitchen? Case in point, diet. Okay, so what if we made a course or a thing that came along with this program that was diet-based? Okay, lovely. It's kind of a unique offer, but you could look around, you could see people who are doing maybe something slightly similar. Maybe you could do it better, but at least at a surface level, you look very similar. All right, what are another problem that they interact with? Okay, well, what precedes diet? Well, what if it's grocery shopping? What if it's actually like attaining a certain type of groceries? What if groceries are too expensive for people? What if people don't think they would be good at getting the right groceries? What if people think that their specific family situation, like maybe a mom who has to provide for a bunch of kids and make a bunch of food for a big family? Does your diet account for that? Maybe not. Maybe it does. And if it does, that's hyper specialized, kind of in a turn niching down. And you basically build it out in the back end and even in the forward part of, like, maybe you're interested in supplements, or maybe you're interested in chemical intervention like Ozempic, those kind of things. So it basically shows that, like, by you writing out all these problems, you can then understand all the things you need to possibly solve. And you don't really need to solve all of them. You just need to solve enough that makes your offer stand out and seem worth it to that individual person. It's also why it helps, I think, to niche down and to know your audience or know your particular market, and why people subsequently say the best things that you could possibly do is just do a bunch of sales, like in person, talking to people and asking, like, well, may I ask why you didn't actually want this, or why this wasn't good enough for you to possibly want to try? Do you perceive you couldn't do it? Do you not really want abs and instead you want like a bubble butt or something? Whatever it could be. So the idea is to stack all those values about understanding what they would value and what they wouldn't. And that's also funny because you end up encountering things that, like, oh, I thought people would want this. This is something I'm reading in another book right now. I want to get into that, called The $100 Startup. But it basically talks about a misunderstanding of what your customers actually value. So you might be thinking, oh, my customers really want abs. And then you find out that, like, the people who are actually coming to your thing are women who want to lose weight. They don't really care about the abs, but there's kind of like a dietary element to it. In your small town where you're advertising this is like a thing. So you're like, okay, they don't necessarily want abs, but they want to lose weight. And then by talking to them, you're like, what do you want? And they're like, oh, I want a bubble butt like Kim Kardashian or something like that, or insert, model, or maybe they want fucking buff ass legs. Fucking awesome, first of all, great. Anyways, the point is that they give you information that then you can adjust to. Like, oh, you really want this? Like, oh, I thought I was in this kind of business. And the reality is this is the business that is available and is starving and is in a lot of pain. And I think this is why he also said something that's like heartbreaking, but also like, okay, it's a shit sandwich you're gonna have to eat, which he says, you want to, when you're just starting out entrepreneurship, you're gonna want to get to your best, worst idea possible. Or he also phrased it like this, you're gonna eat shit immediately. Basically, if it's your first entrepreneurial venture, you're probably not gonna do well in it. Because you don't know nothing about marketing, sales, so you're just gonna get in there, cap. Just do as much as you can, learn as much as you can, and then apply it to the next business. And it helps because if you're in the fight or you're swimming in the ocean, you can start to feel the current or the wave pull you in a certain direction. And that's helpful. But if you're always observing the waves, it just looks like a bunch of fucking waves. You got to get in there and feel the pull. At least that's what I think the analogy, so to speak, could be. Okay, so we kind of jumped ahead about like the overall core of what this book is, which is to make like the best offer you possibly can. But before you make that offer, it would really help for you to know what is intrinsically valuable. So he comes up with this saying that I think like this is what I meant by this could apply to anything. There's a lot in this book that could apply to like content creation, that could apply to like Instagram stuff, that could apply to even dating to some extent. It's you understanding like if something is intrinsically valuable or not, or worth it or not. Specifically in regards to business in this context. But this value equation is simply, think of like dividing, essentially. So on the top half, you have the dream outcome, which is, are you able to properly target into words what the customer actually desires? Again, we talked about this of like, you might go into a business thinking like, I do this thing. And then the main customer base that you're targeting is like, I don't really want that. I want this thing. So you have now a better context of what the dream outcome for them actually is. So now you have maybe a reset of like what their dream outcome actually is, then you can focus on the everything else. So the first part is, do you even understand truly what they really value, what they really want? So you start off with a guess, a good guess, a dream outcome. And then the second part is perceived likelihood of achievement. And I think he's changed this in the past of like risk or reduction of risk. But the TLDR is, does this idea, this business premise, do they perceive they can actually achieve what you're setting out, essentially? So it helps when you're in a thing that you can relate it to something else. So like, oh, if you've ever seen like Tae Bo instructions back in the 80s, punch, kick, whatever. It's like that, but more guided with weight equipment. So you can tie it to something where like they know what to compare it to, and they perceive that, oh yeah, I did Tae Bo beforehand, I could probably pull this off. So they increases their perceived likelihood of actually being able to achieve it. So those are the two things that you want to have good. You want to have better outcomes that they want, i.e. you're going to be able to afford what you're going to be able to buy for this diet. You're going to be able to do the diet and make the food, and then you're going to be able to exercise and achieve the results you want through exercise. So if you know all three of those dream outcomes, then you can stack all three of those, and if you have a way to increase the perceived likelihood of that they achieve all three of those things, then you're having good things. But you're also basically promising more. And this is something he talks about in the book, which is most people focusing on making lofty promises and really struggle to keep them. Whereas it's significantly better on focusing on the pain aspect of it. So the bottom half of the dividing equation, is effort and sacrifice. I remember it in this way. Time delay and effort and sacrifice. So time delay is basically like, how quickly can I get to this goal? How fast can I get to the dream outcome? And then effort and sacrifice is everything that I have to give up and everything that I now have to do that I don't want to do. So it's basically like, how many shitty things do I have to do and how many things I love do I have to give up? That's effort and sacrifice. So if you were able to find something, an idea, a concept, a business concept, plan, a product, a service, anything, and you think about it, I think that might be powerful, I think that might be valuable, you would basically go through this algorithm in your head. And it doesn't need to be complicated. It's as simple as, do I think that I can perfectly articulate the dream outcome of this particular customer. And this is kind of why I think before all this, you need a who and a what. So you need to have a concept of what you're going to offer, and a person that you're going to offer to, or some person you're going to offer something to, and what do you think they may want. Either or, the who or the what can come, I think, and either or. Anyways, but then you need to know the dream outcome that they actually want. And then you need to find all the ways to increase the perceived likelihood that they think that they will be able to achieve that outcome. And then you need to lower the amount of time delay it would take to get to that outcome, that dream outcome. And then you need to try to lower or facilitate the effort and sacrifice needed to attain that thing. He gives the great example of like the reason why plastic surgery and like a gym course, workout, whatever, is not valued the same at all. So like if you think about like what we're trying to do is quantify something's value, which value means valuable to a person, which in turn means valuable money-wise. So if we take the example of like a gym membership or a fitness course, for dream outcome, do you think you can like perfectly articulate that? Yeah, you're going to get abs, you're going to get fit, you're going to get lose weight, all of these variables I'm sure will be a dream outcome to a particular type of person, right? Okay, dream outcome check. That's one checked off the list. Great. What about perceived likelihood of achievement? Could I make somebody perceive that they can do all this? It's tougher. They probably have already tried certain fitness things and have failed. They probably see how hard it is to do, and they probably don't want to do it. They probably have a baseline understanding of the effort and sacrifice that it's needed to do it, to where they probably won't achieve it. Ooh, what can help with this? Referrals can help. A community can help. A specific unique angle like Weight Watchers, or like our own unique spin on this that makes it feel different, that could help. But that's probably like a 5. Like that's like a half check mark. Let's give it like a half, 50% maybe. And now let's move on to the other things. Time delay. A fitness course, you'll have to show up probably for like 3 or 4 months before you start seeing a meaningful result, unless you have beginner gains. That can help drastically. It's not, let's give it another 5 point. Maybe you can convince them, maybe you're really good at what you do, and you can make that come down to like 2 months or a month, and yeah, you'll see some modicum of success maybe. Anyways, weight loss at the very little. If you have the diet plan and the course plan, there's a chance that they're going to lose a lot of weight, which is good. Anyways, the effort and sacrifice is probably the biggest like fucking brutality aspect of this, which is you're going to have to wake up early, or you're going to have to find time in your day. You're going to have to dedicate like 2 hours to getting sweaty, gross, being sore, being tired, sitting on the toilet and being like, oh my God, my cheeks, so on and so forth. So, but it's funny because I say all that, and yet fitness and exercise is still a multi-million-dollar industry. So it's not that it's not valuable, it's just not the same value as liposuction. Liposuction, people are willing to spend like $20K or something on like a tummy tuck or boobs or whatever, or a fixed nose. The reason why is because dream outcome, you sit down in a chair, you wake up, you feel sore, but you wake up and you get your beautiful nose. You get the exact nose you pick out from a fucking pamphlet, dude. And the perceived likelihood of achievement, you know plenty of people who do this. And so long as the person's not just starting out in his medical career, you're probably, I don't think anyone's going to deny like, oh yeah, the plastic surgery is just going to be a botch job, you know, unless you're really underpaying for it, which is funny because people will pay a lot more because they want to make sure they get the exact result they're wanting. Anyways, then the effort and sacrifice, you literally just get knocked out for a couple days. You maybe have some bruising around your nose, but largely you're done after that little moment of misery. Time delay, sorry. You go to sleep for a day and you're boom, you're good. Maybe 2 weeks if we're talking about the entire process of this. So this is why like everything has intrinsic value usually. But it's the level of value that this is trying to scale. So again, 20K or like 15K or whatever for new teeth, for like a new nose, for improved chesticles, whatever you want. All these things. Oh, also, by the way, I was born like missing some bones in my finger, just in case someone new who sees this. I was born with like a weird deformity in my hands. Yeah, I just thought I'd mention that real quick, just because I use my hands a lot. Anyways. But yeah, that's why like the value of like a fitness course will never be anything near the value of course, liposuction. He gives also the example of like meditation versus Xanax, which is like a stress relieving drug, or just drugs in general. Drugs promise usually sometimes falsely, an immediate gain with very little work, with very little effort, with very little sacrifice, with maybe a 10-second delay. Like it's like no question why supplements or whatever or medicine is like a bazillion-dollar industry, because it plays exactly into what people perceive as valuable, which is I have to give up less and anything. Honestly, the more valuable or the more something costs, the more people would probably believe that the medicine actually works too. Yeah, this is the other thing that he mentions, which is funny and he mentions basically that like another thing in favor of charging people higher prices is that it is statistically shown through studies and so on and so forth, that if you say something costs more, they tend to perceive that it's going to work or it's going to be better. So like he gives the example of wine, where a bunch of people try basically the same bottle of wine from like the same gambit of price ranges, and they say, this one's worth this much, this one's worth that much. Whatever they say is worth more, the people attribute to being tastier, better, etc. So if you're a business owner, it's kind of helpful for you to say, okay, if I'm trying to give the best product or the best feeling or the best outcome possible for my client, it helps to charge them to the extent in which he would probably say the fucking highest amount possible, but I think to the extent in which you can offer the right value. Which I think he also would say. It's also a book. He gives like a chart of like the value you generate and the price you can give. You want to make sure they're actually not balanced out, like in a way that they both leverage off of each other, I guess would be a good way to put it. Anyways, so yes, how to pick the right market. He gives a good like kind of baseline of what you should do for that. He goes into the meticulous nature of niching down as well, which, I mean, dude, it's tough. It's funny because this is a big tangent. I'm sorry. It's not really tied to the book. It's tied to like my own weird experience, which probably isn't worth much to you. But hey, here's what it is. I learned a lot in the last 2 years about everything YouTube. I went and read every like Mr. Beast article, every video, every course. I went and just devoured everything that I could about content creation. And one of the things I kept coming up with is people suggesting basically niching down. And the issue I have with that is that I feel like it's an incomplete answer. And he gives the example, which I think is infinitely better in one of the videos I watched. So here's what it is. Instead of perceiving your market as niching down, perceive a problem that encompasses that market. There's like hundreds of problems that encompass that market. So for instance, if we look at weight loss or fitness or the exercise health and wellness aspect of a market, it's so much more beneficial, at least in my opinion, to focus around a core, fundamental baseline want or problem that people have. So if we take the example instead, let's say just take the example of you have a business that's about, this example he gives, you're basically selling gym memberships. Okay, great. The issue with selling gym memberships is that you basically might interact with someone who doesn't like the vehicle or the solution or the encompassing thing that gets them to the outcome that they want, or the dream outcome that they want, right? So for instance, you're maybe like, hey, I'm offering this gym membership, would you be interested? And then some people might be like, oh no, actually I'm not really. But if you were to offer them something different, such as, oh, here's this like dietary plan that we have, or this meal service that we have, they might be significantly more interested in that. Maybe because they're averse to like the physical exercise or the effort and sacrifice that one solution may demand. Or maybe they're privy to one's time delay, whatever it could be. So the idea is that this is the complete process of it. Instead of focusing on that, like, oh, I'm in the gym space, instead focus on this core problem, which is weight loss. So if you focus and you look at your business as that, or, oh, I'm mainly in health and wellness, sure, but weight loss. That's my main thing that I'm trying to target and focus on trying to solve or help people who have this over-encompassing problem. And then you can niche down in the solutions that you generate for each thing. So there's a ton of vehicles, people refer to this as, when it comes to business and solving certain solutions. So, for example, also, I'm so sorry if no one's really into this. It's not really, I find it really like addictive to talk about and try to think about and solve. But anyways, so for weight loss, there is like gym memberships, sure, cardio, running, not the best for weight loss, but still good and can still give you something that you're happy with after you lose weight, which is like a nice physique. But then there's other things that people have, such as supplementation, with Ozempic being in the news right now, that's big, with dietary plans and stuff like that, with meal prep, so you can actually, or meal services that offer like you don't have to like make anything. We'll do it for you. So there's all of these vehicles that you could potentially tap into when one might not be providing the value that you get, instead of resetting everything. So this is something that he mentions that I feel like is the key to what he was talking about, at least to me, and it make sense in my head. That I wish he made a whole video about, because I think that's way more valuable. Because he kind of talks about this idea. I'm trying not to lose where it was. But like, he speaks to this point. I've heard him say this a lot, which is like, whatever you plan on doing, commit. And I think it makes so much more sense when you think about it like this, which is you commit to, sure, like health and wellness, but then try to commit to a overall core problem that you can find. Like in all the health and wellness, there's going to be thousands of these core problems that everyone kind of relates to, and everyone probably has a want at some point in their life that they need to address this. And then look at all of the vehicles that people choose to solve these things, whether it's diet, whether it's courses, whether it's teaching, whether it's in-service thing, whatever it is. And then from there, you can niche down, but you never lose the knowledge base you have of the core problem and the subsequent kind of solutions that probably have bleed over to these other vehicles. Like, for instance, if you make a course on how to do good cardio, to run, to get like nice big legs, to burn cardio, to lose weight or something like that, you already know how to make a course. You already know how to do that. So why not plug it into one of the other variables of like diet? And that can be specialized into whatever. Maybe you're trying to specialize into like curry or something like that, because there's a massive market of Indian people who are naturally starting to become more obese as time goes on because of a study you've seen or something. And then you could be like, okay, well, I want to make it so that they can still enjoy the dishes that they love to enjoy, but just at a rate in which they don't have to have so many calories in said dish, and so on and so forth. But that to me made a lot more sense. Instead of like choosing a market, you're almost choosing a core fundamental problem that you're intimately understand and you're willing to constantly invest in. And then you just observe all of the vehicles in the middle in which people solve that problem. And then you can hyper niche in to whatever that is for a target audience. So for a target specifically. And to me, that made a lot more sense. To bring this back around what I was saying with the whole YouTube thing, that's what they gave advice to, which is like niche down. But I always felt like that wasn't really the best advice, because you end up just like basically satisfying a small group of people, kind of. And sometimes that group of people may not exist or doesn't bite. And if I had the complete understanding that I have now, I'd realize, oh, that's fine. I would just move to another vehicle or move to another angle on that thing. And even angle, I would say, maybe. But to me, I think it makes sense to just like be like, okay, I'm intimately familiar with this problem. Here's a different solution metric that I can learn up on, but I do have some cross-reference convergence aspect of it, you know? Which I didn't hear him define. So that's why I want to ramble about it, but that's not really in the book. The book does have elements of it though. But that's my takeaway of it. Anyways, yeah, so just to round off some of the things that they go more into the book with, which is he gets you basically to write down all of the problems that you're gonna encounter, like your customer could have, which is really helpful. So he gives the example of like, okay, you have a person, whatever, let's say it's a woman. Okay, now you're offering a fitness course. Sure. What are all the things that they may encounter? Okay, well, they may struggle with buying food. Okay, maybe they're struggling with buying the right food for the right price and all these things, and then basically facilitating their diet. Okay, maybe they're also going to have weird issues, like they're a stay-at-home mom, so they have to make a bunch of food for a bunch of people. And this is something that I think he would probably argue is where sales comes in, where like you're actually selling to people and you're talking to them and finding out, like actively listening about what's debilitating them or not making the purchase, and therefore you would try to find solutions to all of those problems. So in the book, he basically gets you to write down an exorbitant amount of problems, and then try to solve as many as possible, and then keep the only ones that are basically something that you can attain or like you can reach for. And he gives this concept, and I'll kind of run it by you guys and see what you guys. Kind of hard to describe to me in my head a little bit, but if you could do anything and you were limited on time, it would make a lot of sense for you to focus in on what I think he calls a high commodity asset. And you have to forgive me, I'm pretty new to entrepreneurship. I don't know all these terms. Forgive me. I'm just starting out and I'm fighting for my life. Anyways, a high commodity asset, which is, and if that's not what it's called, it's essentially, what if you had to spend a lot of time of upfront cost with something, but could infinitely be sold afterwards? This is kind of the idea of software, where like, yes, you spend maybe like months and years developing a type of software, but when it's done, it infinitely can provide you returns over the years. And maybe just maybe, you could increase, like, you could update some aspects of it to keep it fresh and new and add some new gimmicky things to it, sure, whatever, or value to it. Try not to be an asshole about it. Then yes, then that can provide more and more value as time goes on. But the point is that you basically don't have to keep cashing in that check. It's not like in order for you to like have one-on-one with someone, you need to show up. You only have so many hours in the day to do that. Whereas if you make a compelling course and you film yourself and you're really good about explaining things and you're really good about explaining the contingencies that people may struggle with and have a fault in, so you can increase your success rate to an insane amount, then you have a high commodity asset that will continue to give you money over time. The issue I have with this is that it makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense for you to be able to build that, and then all your limitation at that point would be the thing that is his second book, which is lead generation, which is now that you have that thing that you have developed maybe for like half a year, maybe it's what he just described, which is like an exercising program where he's like, okay, I'm going to give you a good program to burn off calories, improve the things that ladies like, bigger bum, more toned stomach, maybe stronger shoulders so their fucking backs aren't constantly dehinged and shit because they hold purses and they're offset by weight and they're just got fucking horrible mobility in their shoulders. Anyways, I'll sneak that in. I also have another thing that I came with, which is like dietary program. And then because a lot of my customers gave me feedback, or because I got a lot of feedback from like female friends who I was asking or something like that, I made a dietary guide where I just filmed myself walking around the store showing like, this is what we could use to make this recipe in the course that I'm going to show you how to make, or so and so. So then I built up this stack of like 4 things, and maybe I even want to go even more into it. And I feel like people would value a calculator where they put in their age, their whatever, they hit go, and then it'll immediately give them the calories that they should be taking, the amount of work that they should be doing, and all of these things. All in one program, you hit go, and it just does it for you. Great. It's also kind of why apps are so successful in a lot of ways too, because it's kind of packaged in the same way. Anyways, so now you develop that for 6 months, and now you have it, and now you basically just need to go out and sell it. So then all of your gears can shift into fucking lead gen, and this essentially is his next book. And I forgive me for like skipping some things here. I'm not talking about so many other chapters where he talks about like supply and demand, and the weird beauty and psychotic nature of all of that. I truly adore this book, and if anyone's even slightly remotely kind of interested in entrepreneurship, I think it is brilliant. And just to end this on like one last little hurrah, if you would be so kind, I have pretty much subscribed to the cult of Alex Hormozi at this point, and his lovely wife Layla, and it's wildly helpful. Like again, it's one of the few things where like, I had to be too honest here, but in the past I reviewed a book that was amazing about YouTube. It's called The YouTube Formula. But in the book, they refer to many times in the book about like a mastermind program, or this like higher tiered thing. And I remember I got in, and I was like a part of an email list or something like that, and it sent like, hey, we're opening slots to this thing, and it was, I did an interview for this like program, and it ended up being like $15K, not like $1,500. I'm talking about like $15,000, $1,000. Sorry, just to me it was like insane. And I at least didn't feel like it would, like, again, this is what I adore about the Alex Hormozi blueprint, which is he talks about like reassurances, and like you need to be able to bring it. You need to be able to actually provide what you're going to do in order to ask for like higher prices or more value. So like anything that you can do to genuinely deliver essentially, to me was something that like was amazing. Like if that program, if they offered like, hey, and this is something that like his like main claim to fame, not really main claim, but one of the many main claims to fames that he has, which he speaks to this idea of, he had this thing called Gym Launch, where essentially he said, hey, I think it was like $15K or maybe more than that, maybe it was like $40K or something like that. He'll basically provide like, I think it's $100,000 worth of value to your gym, and you only have to pay him as you go. So as you start making money and as you start using the system, then you can start paying him a small percentage of that. So if you don't have the money up front, you're okay. And I think he had like a bunch of things in there basically that just made you feel like he's the real deal. Like he's not just trying to get money and leave. He's trying to say, no, I believe I can get you to succeed if you put the work in. And that's not what I had with this one YouTube program thing. It was the exact opposite, where I thought like, I want to drop $15K and I don't even know what this really is. It just feels scammy to me, or at the very least not what I'm hoping for. So I never went through with it, thank God. Okay, wasn't sure about this, but right now, currently, I have devoured everything, and I've been lucky enough to have one good and bad skill set in my life, which is freakish obsession. I can lock in for a long time and just sit in misery and learn and learn and learn and learn for a long time. I'm pretty good about like applying what I'm learning as well, because I learned how to do YouTube from zero. I learned how to edit all these things, which is not crazy. I know people are much more grander than I, but I digress. I find myself kind of stuck in this position right now where I'm enjoying the process so much of learning everything about entrepreneurship. It's significantly easier than learning about the crazy variability of YouTube. And it's so nice seeing some videos from him, etc., that talk about this idea of like leverage. But like, what if you could learn a skill where you put 1 coin in and you get 10 out? Wouldn't that be worth learning? And marketing, sales, and all these things he says, which I agree with, would be one of those things. But to me, I find myself in this position. I'm not sure if anyone can relate. I keep trying to like write out what that would be. And I guess this is what I mentioned at the very beginning, which is like the zero. Like, how do you take the skill set that you've garnered and build something out enough to the point in which you can like feel good about it? And it's funny because I hear like I feel like one of the things I've always done is like read tons of comments on any post I ever read ever. And it's given me the idea of like understanding what people will say or what people kind of mean usually by what they say sometimes. So like one of the things he says is like commit to the thing that you're going to do. Like do not jump to a different market and reset and all this stuff. I have to learn all this stuff again. But like just the idea of like, oh, like for instance, if we take that one skill set, which I don't think is the strongest skill set, but I learned it for 2 years, which is like how to do YouTube, how to make a good thumbnail, how to look at CTR data, how to understand why like formatting your content and understanding a pipeline that you can deliver on for people time and time again is useful, like value of a kind and things like that. And like knowing how to make a thumbnail and looking at a bunch of research data about that. How to take all that and then make it so that you could give an offer to someone in which they'd be interested into it. And I think if you committed to that and said like, I'm going to burn every bridge and I'm just going to figure out how to make this work. And you sat in there enough, you would eventually come up with an offer that's good enough. Or come up with the realization that you need to know more and in turn eventually make an offer that is good enough. But the hesitation is something that I find myself, it sounds weird, but like I just want to bet on the right horse, I guess. And I know the horse I choose is probably going to eat shit and die, but I find myself stuck in this kind of loop of like, I don't want to keep researching because I do want to keep learning, but I guess that's part of it, is because I did YouTube for so long and because I've had such weird luck with it, or not luck, but just weird choices I've made that I think have been positive and sometimes negative. It's left me in this situation where I kind of feel like I don't know. I would really prefer to pick something that works, or that could provide some value and not waste any more time. But I think it's a really bad way to learn, or a bad way to think about it. I think it's the best way to learn about it is think about it as learning. You're gonna eat shit and fail, but you're not failing. You're just gonna learn. You're learning essentially. So I've heard all these things, but man, it's so hard to break yourself, to like nudge yourself in that direction and like say, I know all this, but I still find my brain subconsciously doing this thing. And also, what if you actually were asked that question of like, what if I'm not accounting for a potential like variable or thing that I could do that other people would value, or an offer that I could make for somebody? Like, is there some way that you could help kickstart my brain into not looking at myself like a low insecurity person that doesn't know what kind of value they could provide, to a person that like, oh, I think I could do that for someone. I think that could be helpful. I think that could actually be worth something. And that's the only part of his book series that I'm sad that I don't think will ever exist. Because he has everything goes up from here essentially. I think the offer, the leads, which is a brilliant book as well, which I hope we'll make another part or another video on that, and then of course his inevitable book called Sales. But I almost wish he made a book that was just ground zero, which I know it's impossible because he's so successful at this point. And I know he has this thing called School. I've looked into it. I understand why it exists. I understand all the things about it essentially. And how it's a great like first start for people and all these things. I get all that. I don't know. I find myself in this paralysis, weird thing. Not in paralysis. I just want to know what I'm gonna pick is gonna be something that's not gonna burn alive, you know? Because that's the other thing, is like there's a lot of things you could risk on and eat shit on. Like you spend 15K or something on something and then it doesn't work out and you're like, well, now I'm out 15K, Jesus. And that's of course pennies compared to many of the bumps in the road entrepreneurs have to take. But I guess that's the reason why I'm following those people as a mentor, is to try to limit those pain points as much as possible. Anyways, so much I could talk to you guys about this stuff. Genuinely, from the bottom of my heart, I am so grateful that I found this book, and I've always seen Alex Hormozi around, but I never dug in as much and actually tried to learn, and there is so much to learn. And I'm grateful for there being so much information out there. And I hope people who are in my position as well keep struggling. As much as I adore a lot of things from what I've learned, the thing I connect with the most, which is so long as you do not quit, you cannot lose. Perhaps it's something I just want to believe, but I hope it's true. Who knows? Maybe I'll be all old and gray and be like, well, at least I tried. I tried at the very least. I think that'll be good enough, so long as I keep trying. Not a bad way to die and all that. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Please go support Alex and his book. I quite enjoy it a lot. And yes, if you ever considered about trying to like start a business or provide value to others, or to help, or to anything, YouTube content creation, Twitch, TikTok, all these things can be applied to that same value equation, picking the right market, and so on and so forth. I adored this book, and I'll continue to reread it many, many, many times. And I hope so badly, if I could ask for some stupid, silly wish, that Alex Hormozi makes that type of video, program, course, or something that is for people at absolute zero. Thank you so much for your time. Hopefully I can see you once again. And goodbye for now, my friends. And also, wish me luck.